Hey guys, welcome to the final chapter of the Knight of Gold Volks plastic kit build. This time I'll be building the arms, followed up with the weapons. So let's get started. First thing is to cut out all the parts. I like to cut all the parts out at once for the step that I'm working on so that I can plan the painting and any other modifications or whatever that I might need to do. So there are a couple parts that are going to be movable, but they're sandwiched in between some other parts, so I'll need to paint them before I can glue that little section together. So here I just wanted to point out a piece that has some seams that will be filled. This little edge is going to be visible in the elbow when everything's put together, so I like to fill it and make it clean. So just like my last video, I'm going to continue using Tamiya light curing putty. This is the movable part that I mentioned earlier, the one that had to be painted before the pieces were put together. You can kind of see why here. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding an additional plastic layer to the finger part of the gripping hands. The fingers are meant to be removable so that you can swap out what it's holding. But because of the way it's glued together, the finger sections don't really fit tightly. They just kind of fall out. So I'm adding a little extra plastic. It's very thin plastic card so that it'll have a tighter fit. Once it's glued in, I trim it so that it matches the size, and it fits pretty tightly after that. It was a little too tight for one of the hands. I actually had to sand it down a little bit, but it works well. Just applying some Panaline wash to the painted parts so far. So my liquid masking fluid dried up because I didn't close the cap tight enough, so I had to buy a new one. But I'm going to be using this for some parts of the undersides of the armor that need to be masked. If you watched one of my last videos where I ruined a brush with the masking fluid by not cleaning it out, that's what I'm using here. It's essentially now just a rubber brush, but it ended up working pretty well, so it wasn't a waste after all. Once everything's painted, I'm removing the liquid mask with a toothpick and the tweezers. The lacquer clear coat is pretty tough, so I'm not really worried about scratching it with the toothpick. This piece cracked when I touched it with glue, and it was pretty tight fit, but these parts aren't really going to be visible once the armor's on, so I wasn't that worried about it. But to prevent the other 3 pieces from doing the same, I widened out the hole slightly so it wasn't as tight of a fit. So here I'm just going to touch up some of the spots that the panel line wash missed with black Vallejo paint. So the kit comes with decals for the shoulder red parts. I decided to use those because of the white border. I just thought it would be easier than painting. So my decal ripped when I was trying to get it into place. I was a little bit too aggressive with it, which I should have known better, but oh well. So I figured I would try to line it up so that you can't really tell that it was ripped. But it wasn't really working, so in the end I decided just to scrap all the decals and take them back off. Except for the top red ones, I left those. The paint color actually matches perfectly, Mr. Color Red. So here I am masking the shape. Luckily it's a very deep groove and it's easy to use as a guide for cutting. So it looks better already. I just need to paint the white line now. So I've given the parts a glossy clear coat. That way when I paint it with this Vallejo acrylic white, I'll be able to wipe off the excess with my finger, like I did in the first video. Because the recessed area for the line is pretty well defined, wiping it off with finger and paper towel actually leaves a nice crisp line. So the decal ripping was kind of a good thing in the end, because I think it actually looks a lot better now. Now I just need to paint these red parts, these little balls, and I'm going to be using Vallejo red. And I'm going to add a drop of retarder medium. What that's going to do is help it dry a little slower. That way the paint will level out into a smooth surface. So I built up one arm already, and now I'm just gonna do the other arm the same way. It's very simple. The parts are just pushing into some polycaps, so it goes in really easily. I had filmed myself assembling the shoulder armor, but the video got deleted accidentally. But it's pretty straightforward. No surprises with those. And both sides are identical. So that's it for all the arm parts. Now I just need to attach them to the main body. So the next step is the stabilizers and the weapons. The stabilizers are really long and they're not going to fit in a display case. Well, at least not a standard DTOF case that most people use. So what I'm going to do is modify them so that you can have the shorter version as well. I just need to make it so that the tip is removable. In the manga, there are actually scenes with it fully retracted, and I've seen a few other panels with the kind of shorter version, and I believe it was like that in the anime movie as well. So as you can see, these stabilizers are pretty long at their full length. And here's what the shorter version will look like. So I'm going to start my modification by gluing the parts together, because otherwise there's going to be a seam where those parts join. So I was squeezing a little too hard to try to get some plastic to ooze out to make the seam easier to fill, and the part broke, but it's not a big deal because I was going to cut it anyway, which you'll see in a moment. I thought of this modification when I was lying in bed trying to sleep. Basically what I'm going to do is trim it so that the parts match up at the joints visually, but I'm going to drill a hole in both sides with a piece of wire. It's a stiff wire on one side so that it will fit into the other side snugly, and you should be able to see what I mean with the visuals. When drilling a small part like this, it's best to go slowly and do it by hand instead of using something like a power drill. And this is how the parts fit. The little tail end just sticks right in there. And it's the same for the back half of the stabilizer to the front half. So next I'm going to fill these little holes where the parts were joined together. Just sand all that smooth. And here's how it works when it's actually attached to the kit. The back half is removed. It's just a piece of wire that sticks in. Same for the tail bit, whatever you want to call it. And it just goes right there where the back half was. Same for both sides. Much more manageable, but I can still swap it for the long ones if I take it to a show or something like that. So I've painted, clear coated, and panel lined the weapons. So now I just need to clean them up and give it a final clear coat.